Guys, thank you for that carrier update. Right now, we're going to welcome our Detroit Bureau Chief, Alan Adler, to the show, talking about continued issues and some tension between Nikola and embattled and indicted founder Trevor Milton. Alan, what's going on this time?
Well, it's so funny. I feel like we need a weekly Nikola segment because we're kind of doing that, right? I mean, the news keeps flowing, both in terms of Trevor, which we'll get to in a moment, and really yesterday's news was the announcement of the CEO succession to Michael Loscheller from Mark Russell. This, again, is one of these succession plans that all you have to do is step back and look at what's going on, and you can see that it's coming. The only surprise is, when do they actually announce it? Well, in this case, finishing up the proxy fight and actually getting the authorization to increase the number of shares for money raising, basically cleared the way for this announcement to be made. Now, what's interesting is that Russell's not particularly old. I mean, many CEOs serve longer. But he is already the largest shareholder in Nikola, about 12%, even more than Trevor, because Trevor Milton has sold off so much of his stake. So Russell stays on the board. Loscheller, who was recruited by the chairman, Steve Gursky, second time he's done that with Loscheller. He did it at Opel when he worked at General Motors a few years ago. And so he likes this guy, obviously. Brought him in as a president of Nikola Motor back in February, and now he'll take over as CEO in January. I've met Loscheller. He's a sharp guy, knows the business really, really well, especially from the European side. And we don't talk about it much, but Nikola really does have a European presence. They have a joint venture partner there in Iveco. And so, this is probably a good thing overall. Now, that's on the business side. We also have some news on the other side of the ledger today.
Yeah, let's get to that. What is going on? And I agree with Loscheller. It seems like it was going to happen, and it is, in my opinion, the obvious choice with his experience there, especially with Opel and others, really in the electrification of automobiles, really, but successful at it and understands the market. And like you said, the tray is an Iveco anyways. Right now. So it makes a lot of sense. Plus, he's almost tall enough to reach the top of that cab. So
that was a personal story, Michael, that I put in at the end of the story yesterday, because when I was at the ACT Expo and at the Nikola display, Loscheller came up, said hello, and he said, I told you I could fit in the cab. And he pulls out this picture, and he's got a big grin on his face, and it's him standing up in the middle of the cab. And I thought, that's hilarious. So finally get a chance to use some of these little anecdotes that you get when you go on the road. And so that seemed to fit really well yesterday.
Yeah, that's awesome. So let's talk about what Kaylee opened this segment up about. What is going on between Nikola and Milton now? What is the latest scuttlebutt?
Well, let's just say that the vice is tightening, okay? So what's going on is, in addition to the criminal trial, which starts on September 12th in New York, Milton also faces trial on SEC charges. The Securities Exchange Commission came after him for much of the same sort of fraud allegations that he'll be tried on criminally. The judge in that case, also in the New York district, made two rulings this week. One was he did allow the federal government to intervene in that case, basically saying that, yes, you want us to wait on the civil trial until the criminal trial is done. You have good reason for doing that, so we're going to put that on hold. That's step one. Step two was sort of another slap at Milton, who you may remember, maybe not, tried to get his criminal trial, moved out to either Arizona, where Nikola is based, or Utah, where he lives. And the judge in his criminal trial said, no, you're not going to do that. You come to New York. We're going to do it here. Well, the same thing happened yesterday, kind of a long opinion I read through from the judge in his civil trial, who basically said, Trevor, you don't have any reason to move your trial. You'll do your trial here just like you will your criminal trial. One thing to watch for now as we get into this is the SEC probably won't have that much that's new to talk about once most of these issues are dealt with in the criminal case, because they're kind of lining up, and they're very similar in terms of the allegations. So it's more maneuvering, but essentially it seems to suggest that we are going to trial. We are going very soon to trial. We're just a month away now, and unless there's some kind of amazing settlement negotiations, and there's always talks about that, but it sure doesn't feel like the government is in any mood to work with him.
So, Alan, my question for you is about the actual proceedings of this trial. If the criminal trial comes through, can the SEC take the pieces of the criminal trial and use that to build their case, or does it have to be two completely separate entities?
Well, they're separate in the sense that the criminal trial will go first. But if something is found, and let's just say, for example, that Milton is found guilty of a fraud charge instead of four, then that becomes a part of the record for the civil trial. And I don't know the conduct of civil trials that well, except that you're not dealing with a criminal charge, so you're not going to go to jail for something that happened in a civil trial. But it could impact a fine or some kind of settlement or whatever. My guess is this all gets cleaned up if we have a criminal trial, and I think we're more than 50% chance of having one. I'm not sure I always believed that, by the way, but I think we're over 50% likely. Once that's settled, I have a feeling other things fall into place pretty quickly. I don't see why the court would want to take more time to sort of rehear the same issues and, the same witnesses and things like that. It just doesn't seem to make any sense.
So, Alan, going back to the change in leadership, of course, this was announced right after they secured the votes to increase those authorized shares of Nikola. Can we talk a little bit about the timing of that? And obviously, they were probably planning this for a while. Was it just kind of a breath of relief after securing that approval and now letting go and saying, we can finally let go of the news?
Well, Nikola will never say for the record that that's what was going on. But clearly, if they were still tied up in trying to get that share authorization through, that's a big issue for the future of the company. You wouldn't change your horse, to use the old FDR thing. You wouldn't change the horse in the middle of the stream. So Russell would have stayed on, I think, as CEO longer to get that done. But two things that he got done as he was sort of wrapping up. Now, he'll be CEO through the end of the year. But two things he got done most recently, and really the list of accomplishments, and it's in my story, is pretty long in terms of what he's managed to get done there with all of the distractions that are going on. But most recently, we just had last week, we had the acquisition of Romeo Power, which essentially secures Nikola's battery supply. Obviously, that was under Russell's watch, and then getting this share authorization done basically clears things up and allows future planning to go forward. So now Loscheller can come in, basically, and doesn't have something heavy hanging over him like that, and can just work on scaling the business. And I think that's what Nikola's trying to do. I mean, second quarter, they delivered 48 trucks. That doesn't sound like much, but how many people on this call alone would have suggested a year ago that they would be delivering trucks at all?
No, none of us. And there's that other company that hasn't delivered one yet, and a guy who's dared him to deliver one. Otherwise, he'll eat a tofu sandwich made out of the soles of his shoes. So that's
if that's Dooner, he's going to have to do it because Musk said yes, we're going to deliver this year.
It was not Dooner. It was somebody else who did that. I will not lay that one on Dooner. Somebody else did that. So listen, they got
Sounds like a Dooner.
Yeah, it does sound like a Dooner, but no, he's the one who found this bet that the guy laid down. But so they got their proxy done. They got Loscheller running at the helm. They got this criminal charge with Milton, or the trial about to come up and clear out. They bought a new battery partner. Should we be bullish on Nikola? I mean, they've survived a lot of stuff, and as the headwinds clear, are they just going to sprint for that finish line? I mean, it sounds, they look like somebody that can do it, right?
I think you've got to give them a sort of rising maybe with a bullet if this was the Billboard charts. I mean, I feel like I don't want to say too much because there's still too many things that can go wrong. They still have a lot ahead of them, but they do seem to have their head down working on electric trucks. They've got a guy coming in, who knows that space and who's been working with them. And, we give Russell proper credit for a number of things, but Loscheller's been really keeping the plant and all of the things that are business related in terms of Nikola Motor moving since he came in February. And so, Steve Gursky, the chairman, has made a number of comments. Of course, we know he's a fan because he brought him in, but he's made a number of comments that Loscheller's killing it, in terms of running the plant and that kind of thing. So I think if you can look ahead and, if we see, good results, a lot of people have ordered these trucks in, small numbers, and with the thought that they'll get more, it's quite possible. I mean, That plant, Michael, will hold 20 or has capacity for 20,000 units. They have a long haul truck coming, the fuel cell. That's not next year, that's in 2024, but you will get a fuel cell version of the BEV, the Tre BEV, excuse me, not the Tre BEV, but the Tre fuel cell next year. That's in testing now with TTSI,
Nice.
California. Budweiser's already tested it. So that's really, remember, when Nikola started, they were going to be a fuel cell truck company and then took on the whole battery thing almost as a side thing. And even the Tre was never intended, at least in the early days, to come here, but now it's going to be a factor. I don't want to pump them up or anything like that, but I think that you could make a case that they're solidifying the business.
Yeah.
I never would have bet that I would have seen Covenant's Nikola truck cruising up and down the streets of downtown Chattanooga this year, but I saw it on Monday.
There you go.
So, there you go.
All it takes is to put it in Chattanooga, Kaylee, and everybody's a believer, right? I mean,
There you go.
Everybody's a
That's
believer.
it. That's it.
Bring it to
The
Freight
proving
Alley, and
grounds.
then it's for real. And it's interesting because most of these trucks early on are going to end up in the ports out in LA and Long Beach because that's where the great incentive environment is and things like that. But I think what you got to watch for now is, are these orders going to increase? And they're looking at a slower third quarter because of supply chain, and then they still hope to be able to get, I think, up to 500 trucks, 300 to 500 trucks done this year. With a lot of that now pushed out to Q4. Mm-hmm. So let's see what happens there.
All right, Alan, thank you for joining us. Interesting stuff, of course, going on at Nikola. As always, we'll talk to you again soon. Right now, we're going to head back over to Sydney Edwards for our next check of top stories.